Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. September is recognized as World Sexual Health Month, and we are very happy to have a two-part mini-series, as it were, with Onika Henry, human sexuality consultant and sex coach. Greetings, Onika. How are you doing?
Greetings to you, DK. I am quite fine. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you, and thank you for making the time. I know it's been a busy period for you, but looking at sexual health, I want us to start off from the ground up, defining it, because when I hear sexual health, I think, okay, well, this is something that could be physical, all parts are working. It can also be an approach, and the mental aspect sometimes translates so quickly and easily into the physical. So let me let you speak. What is sexual health?
So I actually wanted to offer two different terms with two different definitions. So let's start with what you asked, sexual health. So sexual health is the ability to enjoy and control your sexual and reproductive life. And so if you are enjoying your sexual life but not controlling it, you're not considered sexually healthy. If you're controlling it but not enjoying it, you're not considered sexually healthy. So that's a very broad definition, right? I'm also going to give you the definition for sexuality. So sexuality is a total sensory experience in which your brain, your thoughts, your fantasies are working in connection with your body, your sensations, etc. And so sexuality would include what turns you on, what turns you off, how you express yourself, how you dress your body, how you present yourself. So more of your personality, whereas sexual health, as you suggested, really has to do with the functioning of your sexual and reproductive organs and how you are able to access services to make sure that those things are functioning well. And so I find when I give those two definitions, it makes it easier for people to figure out what aspects of themselves they're dealing with. Was that helpful?
It was, but I also want to ask, where do those things bleed into each other? Where do they meld? Because the being able to enjoy, being able to having your personality come out, how does that blend into the health aspect of it?
Right. And so think of it this way. If you are able to enjoy your sexuality free from risks of STIs. So there are lots of things you'd like to do because those are things that turn you on. These are things that motivate you to connect to yourself or to your partner. But if they are putting you at risk, it means you need to change how you approach enjoying that sexuality. How are you enjoying your body? Not just your body, but that of others, if we're talking about partner sex. Free from unwanted pregnancy, free from violence. And so being able to express your personality and your emotions, your thoughts, your fantasies, exploring and experimenting with your sensations and your body, you need to be able to do all of that in a space that is safe and healthy for you physically. Did I blend that well enough for you?
Yes, thank you. And as you're speaking, you're raising other things that I want to ask about a little more. And I really, that point that you made of with yourself or with a partner, I think sometimes people say, okay, well, sexual health or sexual pleasure always involves a partner. So how do you say, okay, well, this is something that I am doing for myself. No one has to be involved apart from me, myself, and I.
Right. So I'm going to let you into how I work, for example. So if someone comes to me with any kind of sexual challenge or issue or dysfunction, especially if they are partnered, we always start with helping them discover or rediscover their body. And that rediscovering sometimes happens because they may have experienced illness or an injury or surgery, and so the body is different. And so solo pleasure, the term I prefer to use, so solo pleasure or solo sex, really is about you learning how your body works without having to worry about someone else, without the interference or distraction of someone else. And when you do that, you are more able to describe how you feel, describe what you want, and give your partner directions. And so we as in those of us who work in clinical sexology, we use solo pleasure as a way of helping people be really deeply self-aware Sometimes we use it to retrain or train the body if the body has particular challenges. For example, men who may have early ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. Learning how to overcome that on their own is critical before they become partnered. Yeah, so there's a sense of having to have that self-discipline, that deep self-awareness, and that deep connection with your body. So your body is in alignment with what you like and what your brain wants to do. And when you're able to do that, when you have that power and agency, it's way easier to help a partner work with you.
And I really like that. I really like the point of rediscovering, and sometimes even there may be situations where you're discovering yourself. And not having the added factor, added potential pressure of someone saying, well, why aren't you, or why can't you? So, and even being able to discover certain things which you're then able to articulate to a partner who's asking, okay, well, how can I, or what would you like me to? But you started listing some things in terms of premature ejaculation or dysfunction. What are some of those prevalent dysfunctions of a sexual nature that you find within your practice?
Right, and so I prefer to describe those challenges or issues or dysfunctions within categories. So, for example, with men, what's very common with men would be issues like early ejaculation. And notice I said early and not premature. I prefer not to use that word if you're talking about adults, a big man and premature. So it just doesn't match, and it feels a little bit judgmental. So early ejaculation, erectile dysfunction. Sometimes there are men who come in with delayed ejaculation. They are actually unable to ejaculate. Sexual trauma. Men may actually come in with body image issues, not being comfortable in the body, or sexual inhibitions, especially if they come from a religious background. So those I see pretty often. With women, what is more common, or what I see most commonly in my space, would be difficulty experiencing orgasm, and that's like there are two ways that women can have that challenge. They may be women who have never experienced orgasm, and then there are those who used to but no longer can, or can only do it by themselves and not with a partner. So orgasm challenges and orgasm issues, genitopelvic pain disorder, which is a combination of painful sex in which penetration is happening, it's possible, but it's painful, or vaginismus, where penetration is not even possible at all. Of course, also sexual trauma, body image issues, as well as sexual inhibition. So, there's the challenges for men, for women, and then there are couples challenges. And so with couples, you may have mismatched desire. One wants to have sexual interactions more often than the other. And sometimes you're talking to couples and one says, well, I like to have sex 3 times a week. And somebody says, what? So much? Somebody else might say, what? So little? I'm still figuring out how to negotiate that. And that's another challenge with couples, negotiating what you want. So lack of communication, negotiation skills with couples, or little or no sex happening in the relationship. And of course, misinterpreting touch and signals, and that's couples. And I could also include other groups that may have challenges, like the sexual minority community, who we refer to as LGBTQI community, and then those who have medical challenges, and what they may be experiencing more often. So I don't want to go too much into that unless you're interested in that, but that is how I talk about top issues, challenges, and dysfunctions based on categories.
And that point of premature versus early, what part does language play in engaging with some of these challenges, engaging with some of these situations as it pertains to sexual health?
Right. So with language comes a particular interpretation based on the culture and the context. And with language also comes a sense of values or judgments or morality. And you don't want any of those to be part of the conversation, unless we're talking here about the spiritual aspect of their sex, and they're trying to work out their values and what matches with what they believe and how they want to integrate their spirituality into their sexuality. But so for example, early simply means you came before you or your partner wanted to, as opposed to premature, which suggests that you have no control. Big man like you, it seems very infantile, and it can make men feel less than, and that's not what you want. But you simply want them to view it in a different light, so that it's easier for folks to be able to manage it and heal and get over it. Another term that I don't use would be, when it comes to women and orgasm, we would say experience orgasm instead of working hard to get an orgasm. Yeah. So, because the harder you try to have an orgasm, the more elusive it becomes. And so you are telling women, allow yourself to experience it. So that means that you're going to now think of how they can let go, how they can allow themselves to be vulnerable, and letting go enough so that the body can actually receive the sensations that feel good, that feel pleasure, that can build up that sexual tension, that would allow them to then release through orgasm. Is that helpful? Did that make sense to you?
It does make help, and that level of vulnerability is one. And then also I want to get back into some partner relations when we return from this short break. We are speaking about sexual health with a sexuality consultant and sex coach, Onika Henry. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are going in depth on sexual health. We're doing so with Onika Henry, human sexuality consultant and sex coach, and vulnerability, the importance of vulnerability in discovering oneself, in having sexual relations, in experiencing optimum sexual health. How does that factor into the entire equation, Onika?
All right. So let's think about it from, so not just in your brain or your mind, in terms of the ability to trust. Can you trust this partner? Do they know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing? We're talking here about how that lack of vulnerability means that parts of your body, that your soma, is really constricted. And so that constriction, that tightness, means that parts of your ability to receive sensory input is not working. It's shut down. And so it means you are limiting the way in which you can experience pleasure. And if you're limiting that, it's not afterwards not going to feel good. You're not going to be focusing on what's happening in your body. You're always going to be up in your mind. And if you're up in your mind, your body's incorporating and working with you. And so after a while, especially with women, it can become painful. It can literally become uncomfortable because your body is not where it needs to be. It's not relaxed enough. If you are not tapping into, do I need to change pressure here or speed? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to change my body position? Do I need to change a pattern of sensory input? And because you're not tapped into your body and you're not paying attention to what's happening, because you're not relaxed and open and vulnerable enough to do that, it means sex can eventually become painful, boring, or uncomfortable, and you may eventually lose interest, because the mind is going to say, why are we wasting time and energy on this? Yeah, like reserve that energy for other things that you seem interested in. And that may eventually lead to a lessening of your desire to have sex. The body is really smart. It tries to save us from ourselves. It tries to save us from things that it believes will be harmful or unhealthy for us.
And I can imagine also, as well, and just to piggyback on what it is you're saying, someone who naturally has a giving nature, or they have expectations of what should be, what the experience should be like, as opposed to discovering with themselves or with their partner and saying, okay, well, this right now I'm at 30 degrees, as opposed to be at 45. I wonder if the music too loud, but I'm frightened to ask. So, and in terms of like those different levels of input, different ways that they are involving themselves, as opposed to saying, okay, well, this is a conversation, and this level of discovery is happening, and every time will be different. Even I think even with a solo experience or with a partner, and trying to get out of that mindset, so we become sensory beings that can receive that sensory input as opposed to just, okay, well, I'm supposed to do this.
Exactly. You really want to make it a situation in which you are able to sense what's happening with your partner's body and communicate or ask questions in ways that don't necessarily interrupt the flow of things. And there's sexy ways to do that, you know. And I always tell folks that there's a conversation or a series of conversations that need to happen before you get sexually active with someone. And there are ways to discover each other's preferences, each other's bodies, that does not have to include penetrative sex. Yeah, there are ways to enjoy your sexuality, to enjoy that connection with somebody. That doesn't mean that you need to take all your clothes off. And so there are levels of discovery without the pressure of expectations, but simply figuring out what works best for this particular interaction with this particular person.
And you're saying that and you're sending me back to a few songs. Well, one of them seems being, we don't have to take our clothes off to have a good time. But in terms of those you understand? But in terms of those conversations, where does sex education and education on sexual health play in? Because I think some of those expectations that may be vaunted or unattainable sometimes, when you hear where the person got that expectation from, it was like, oh gosh, pity popo. Where does this start from in terms of like education towards ideal or optimal sexual health?
Right. So comprehensive sex education starts from the time your child is born. And I say that to explain that you see that connection between you and baby, that sense of touch, of feeling safe, of feeling vulnerable, of knowing that the world is a safe place to be in, satisfying skin hunger, the sensory input starts from there. How we talk to our children, when we clean them, when we're bathing them, when we about their body parts and their genitals, so that talking about genitals is just as normal and easy as talking about an elbow or a finger or their neck. And so the language and the ability to communicate easily about the body and the body parts. So that's coming up from toddlerhood, babyhood, going right through to preschool, where they're going to be learning about consent from age 3. How do you ask someone for physical contact? Do you want to hug? No, I don't want to hug. I just want to high five. So giving them options in terms of ways that they may want to, you know, to communicate with each other physically, because we teach consent from age 3. So even from that age, they are learning how to ask, how to accept this is not rejection. This is simply this person doesn't want this to happen right now. That has nothing to do with me. And I can offer other options that we both like. And then we're going up through the developmental stage as the brain is developing and they need to know more. We give them more language to talk about what is okay to touch and what's not okay to touch and by whom and when. So we only touch your genitals if there's something wrong and you're hurting, and only these people are allowed to do it. And if you're the doctor, parent needs to be present. And so if you have those, once again, it's a series of conversations that change and adjust according to your child's developmental stage and age. As they go through life, they are going to already have those foundational skills of learning how to communicate, how to negotiate, and having that comfort with communicating about sexuality and sexual issues. And so it is key. It is critical so that we don't make the kinds of mistakes that our generation, have been making, and still passing those on to our young people. Keeping yourself safe, negotiating safer sex with a partner. All of those are foundational things that you learn coming through an education system. So it is critical.
And in terms of that education system, though, I think sometimes people, they are thinking, okay, well, from the time you say sexual education, sexual health is because we're going to be the most graphic, and there's going to be this tell-all expose from jump, as opposed to, as you say, looking at it, gradating through levels, and even using correct names, because butterfly and birds and bees have nothing to do with what this kind of way. So there's an issue in terms of like saying, okay, well, this is almost as though this is foreign to me. This is not a part of me. And it removes agency from a person, from an individual, which I think goes back to the starting conversation and saying that this person has power over themselves.
Yes, yes. And what is critical about that, having that bodily autonomy and having power over yourself, is that you can then choose how to have power with someone in an interaction. Yeah. So yeah, it is critical. But we are still so very deeply afraid of comprehensive sex ed, and there's so many misconceptions and myths about what that means. So we're still backing away from it. We're not facing it head on, and the issues and the challenges that we're seeing in our young people continues. And as far as I can tell, it's not getting any better at all.
That is something that I want us to. I'm very grateful that from jump we said we're going to have a part 2 of this. So we'll discuss some of those myths and some of the ways we can combat those myths, in addition to other things in part 2 of this conversation. But thank you very much, Onika Henry, human sexuality consultant and sex coach. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.